My father died 3 years ago, and within 6 months, my stepmother had stolen everything he'd built. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She thought I was too grief-stricken, too young, too naive to fight back. She was wrong on all counts. This is the story of how I exposed her fraud, reclaimed my inheritance, and destroyed her reputation in the process. I'm Sophie, I'm 29 years old, and I'm an architect just like my dad was. My father, Harrison Chen, founded Chen & Associates, a boutique architecture firm in Austin, Texas, specializing in sustainable residential design. He built that firm from nothing, starting in our garage when I was 5 years old, growing it into one of the most respected firms in Texas. My mom died when I was 12, cancer. It was just Dad and me for 6 years after that, and we were close. He taught me everything about architecture, about design, about building something meaningful. I decided to become an architect because of him. I went to UT Austin for architecture, then worked at other firms to get experience before joining Chen & Associates. That was the plan, anyway, get my license, work elsewhere for a few years to prove myself, then join the family firm as a partner. Dad and I talked about it constantly. This will be yours someday, he'd tell me. Chen & Associates, the name stays, but you'll be the one running it. Then he married Vanessa. I was 23 when Dad started dating her. She was 38, 15 years younger than him, but whatever. I tried to be open-minded. Dad deserved companionship. Vanessa seemed nice enough at first. She worked in real estate, said she loved architecture, seemed interested in Dad's work. They got married after dating for just 8 months. Fast, but Dad seemed happy, and I was busy with my career. I'd just gotten my architecture license and was working at a prestigious firm in Houston. I figured Vanessa made Dad happy, and that was what mattered. Looking back, there were red flags everywhere. Vanessa pushed to get married quickly. She insisted on being added to Dad's business accounts to help with paperwork. She started attending firm events and positioning herself as an essential part of Chen & Associates, even though she had no architecture background and no formal role there. But I was 2 hours away in Houston, and I trusted my dad to handle his business. He was brilliant, successful, careful. I didn't think I needed to worry. Then Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors gave him maybe a year. It was devastating. I immediately moved back to Austin to be with him. I took a leave of absence from my job to help run the firm while Dad underwent treatment. Vanessa, of course, was there too, playing the devoted wife. During those awful months, Dad and I talked about the future. He wanted to make sure the firm would survive him. I'm putting everything in writing, he told me. The firm will be yours, Sophie. That's always been the plan. Vanessa will be taken care of financially, but Chen & Associates is your legacy. He showed me his will, or what I thought was his will. It stated that I would inherit majority ownership of the firm, 60%, with the remaining 40% split between key employees. Vanessa would inherit his personal assets and their shared property, which was substantial. It was fair. Dad died 7 months after his diagnosis. I was holding his hand. Vanessa was crying dramatically beside me. It was the worst day of my life. The funeral was brutal. I was numb with grief, going through the motions. Vanessa played the grieving widow perfectly, crying on demand, accepting condolences, talking about how much Harrison would be missed. 1 week after the funeral, we met with Dad's lawyer for the reading of the will. That's when everything fell apart. The lawyer read out a will I'd never seen before. In this version, Vanessa inherited majority ownership of Chen & Associates, 65% plus all personal assets. I was left with a minority 20% stake in a small trust fund. The remaining 15% was split among employees. I was speechless. That's not right, I finally managed. That's not the will he showed me. This is the most recent will, dated 6 weeks before Harrison's death, the lawyer explained. He looked uncomfortable. It's properly signed and witnessed. 6 weeks before his death, he was barely conscious most days, I said, my voice rising. He was on heavy pain medication. There's no way he made these changes. I understand this is difficult, the lawyer said gently. But the will is legal and valid. Vanessa was quiet, her face arranged in an expression of sad sympathy. I know this is hard, Sophie. Your father and I discussed his wishes extensively. He wanted to ensure I could maintain the firm's operations. You're not an architect. You have no idea how to run the firm. Which is why I'll be hiring excellent people to help me, she said smoothly. Including you, if you're willing to stay on. I stormed out. I spent the next week in shock, trying to understand what happened. The will Dad had shown me months earlier was gone, not in his files, not with the lawyer, nowhere. This new will gave Vanessa control of everything. My father's closest friends and colleagues were appalled. Harrison would never have done this, they told me. He talked about you running the firm constantly. This doesn't make sense. But legally, there was nothing anyone could do. The will was properly executed, signed by my father, or what looked like his signature, and witnessed by two people, both of whom were Vanessa's friends, I later learned. Within 2 months, Vanessa started making changes to Chen and Associates. She brought in a business manager, some guy she knew from her real estate days, to handle operations. She pushed out several of Dad's longest-serving employees, the ones who'd been loyal to him and who questioned her decisions. And then she came for me. I was called into a meeting with Vanessa and her business manager. Sophie, we need to discuss your role at the firm, Vanessa began. Frankly, I don't think this is a good environment for you. There's so much grief, so many memories. I think it would be healthier for you to move on, start fresh somewhere else. You're firing me? From my own family's firm. I'm suggesting that it might be better for everyone, she said with fake concern. Of course, we'll buy out your 20% stake at a fair price. The fair price she offered was insultingly low, calculated based on the firm's current value, which had already dropped under her mismanagement. I refused. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying, and I'm going to make sure this firm survives your incompetence. Vanessa's expression hardened. Then you'll be doing so as a junior associate, not a partner. You'll be working under our senior team, and you'll need to prove yourself like everyone else. They demoted me. In my own father's firm, I went from promised future partner to junior associate. I was assigned to work under architects with less experience than me, given grunt work, and excluded from major projects. It was humiliating. But I stayed, because I couldn't let her destroy everything Dad had built. Meanwhile, Vanessa was running Chen and Associates into the ground. She had no understanding of architecture or design, and her business manager was focused solely on short-term profits. They started taking on projects that didn't align with the firm's sustainability mission, just whatever paid. They cut corners on designs to save time. Quality control went out the window. Clients started complaining. Several long-time clients took their business elsewhere. The firm's reputation, which Dad had spent 25 years building, was crumbling in months. I documented everything. Every bad decision, every client complaint, every departure of talented staff. I kept meticulous records, not sure what I'd do with them but knowing they'd be important someday. But what I really needed was proof that the will was a forgery. I became obsessed with it. How had Vanessa pulled it off? Dad was barely conscious in those final weeks. How did she get him to sign? Or did she forge his signature? I started investigating. I hired a private investigator to look into Vanessa's background and the witnesses who'd signed the will. What he found was illuminating. The two witnesses were both friends of Vanessa's from her real estate days. One of them, a woman named Patricia, had a history of questionable business dealings. She'd been fired from 2 real estate firms for ethics violations. The other witness, a man named Derek, owed Vanessa money and had several lawsuits against him for debt. These weren't random witnesses. These were people Vanessa could control. But I needed more than suspicious witnesses. I needed proof of forgery. I got lucky in an unexpected way. One of the nurses who'd cared for Dad in his final weeks reached out to me. She'd seen the news about Chen and Associates' struggles and wanted to talk. I need to tell you something, she said when we met. It's been bothering me for months. About 6 weeks before your father passed, a woman came to visit him, your stepmother. I was checking vitals in the room. He was barely conscious, heavily sedated. She had papers with her, and she was moving his hand, guiding it across the pages. My heart started racing. She was forging his signature. I don't know for certain, but it looked wrong. I mentioned it to my supervisor, but nothing came of it. Your father died a few weeks later, and I moved to a different facility. But when I saw what's happening with his company, I thought you should know. Would you testify to this? She hesitated. It could hurt my career. But yes. What she did was wrong. I'll testify. I now had a witness who could place Vanessa in the room with documents around the time the will was supposedly signed, with Dad unable to consent. But I needed forensic evidence too. I hired a document examiner, someone who specializes in detecting forged signatures. It cost me most of my savings, but it was worth it. The examiner compared the signature on the contested will with Dad's known signatures from medical documents, business papers, and personal letters. His conclusion was damning: the signature on the will showed signs of forgery. The pressure patterns were wrong. The stroke patterns were inconsistent with Dad's natural handwriting, and there were indicators of guided hand signing exactly what the nurse had described. This signature was either traced or created by someone guiding the subject's hand, the examiner told me. Given the medical records you've provided showing the subject's condition at the time, I would conclude this was not a voluntary signature. I had everything I needed. The nurse's testimony. The forensic analysis. The suspicious witnesses. The timeline showing Dad's mental incapacity. I filed a lawsuit contesting the will. Vanessa tried to dismiss it, confident that her legal team could crush me. But when my lawyer presented our evidence in the preliminary hearing, the judge looked very interested. "This is substantial evidence of potential fraud," the judge said. "I'm ordering a full investigation and freezing all assets related to the estate pending resolution." Vanessa's face went white. The firm's accounts were frozen. She couldn't sell anything, couldn't make major changes, couldn't push me out. Everything was locked down pending the trial. The trial took 8 months to prepare. It was brutal. Vanessa hired expensive lawyers who attacked me viciously. They claimed I was a bitter daughter who couldn't accept her father's final wishes. They said I was trying to steal from my grieving stepmother. They painted me as greedy and vindictive. But the evidence was overwhelming. The nurse testified about what she'd seen Vanessa guiding Dad's hand while he was barely conscious. The document examiner presented his analysis showing the signature was forged. The private investigator testified about the witnesses' questionable backgrounds and their connections to Vanessa. We also presented evidence that Vanessa had a financial motive. Turns out she had massive debts from failed real estate investments, debts that Dad hadn't known about. Taking over the firm and its assets would solve all her financial problems. The trial lasted 3 weeks. In the end, the judge's ruling was clear and decisive. The court finds that the will dated 6 weeks before Harrison Chen's death is fraudulent. The evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that Mr. Chen was not mentally competent to execute a will at that time, that his signature was obtained through deceptive means, and that Mrs. Chen Vanessa knowingly participated in the creation of a fraudulent document for financial gain. The original will, the one Dad had shown me, was reinstated as the valid last will and testament. I got my 60% of the firm. Vanessa got nothing from the business, and her inheritance of personal assets was reduced due to her fraud. But it got better. The judge referred the case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. Forging a will is serious fraud. The DA decided to prosecute. Vanessa was arrested 6 weeks after the civil trial ended. She was charged with forgery, fraud, and elder abuse. The trial was quick. The evidence from my civil case made the criminal case straightforward. She was convicted on all counts. She got 3 years in prison and was ordered to pay restitution for the damage she'd done to the firm's value and reputation. I took over Chen and Associates as majority owner. My first act was to fire Vanessa's business manager and everyone else she'd brought in. My second act was to rehire everyone she'd pushed out, including Dad's most loyal employees. Rebuilding the firm's reputation took time. I personally reached out to every client we'd lost, apologized for what had happened under Vanessa's mismanagement, and showed them our renewed commitment to quality and sustainability. Many of them came back. I implemented Dad's vision for the firm, the one he'd shared with me during those long conversations while I was growing up. Sustainable design, innovative residential architecture, a commitment to excellence. Within a year, we'd won several industry awards. Within 2 years, we were more successful than we'd ever been under Dad's leadership. I renamed the firm Chen & Chen, honoring my father and acknowledging that this was now my legacy to build. The architecture community in Austin rallied around me. Everyone had known Dad, and everyone knew what Vanessa had tried to do. There was tremendous support for the firm's revival. We became a case study in resilience and integrity. Vanessa served 2 years of her sentence before being released on parole. I heard she moved out of state, bankrupt and disgraced. Her real estate license was revoked. Her reputation was destroyed. She lost everything she'd tried to steal. I occasionally think about her sitting in her prison cell, knowing that her greed had cost her everything. No money, no firm, no reputation, just the knowledge that she'd tried to cheat a grieving daughter and failed spectacularly. My father's friends and colleagues tell me he'd be proud. You fought for his legacy, they say. You saved everything he built. I think about Dad every day. I wish he could see the firm now, thriving and growing. I wish he could see me running it, implementing his vision, building on his foundation. I wish he'd been more careful about who he married. But I also think he'd be proud of how I fought back. He taught me to stand up for what's right, to never back down from a challenge, to build things that matter. I applied those lessons to saving his life's work. People ask me if I hate Vanessa. Honestly, I don't think about her enough to hate her. She was a con artist who saw an opportunity and took it. She underestimated me, and she paid the price. What I learned from all of this is that grief makes you vulnerable, and there are people who will exploit that vulnerability. Vanessa saw my father's illness as an opportunity for profit. She thought a young, grieving daughter would be easy to push aside. She was wrong. I fought back with everything I had. I gathered evidence, built a case, and exposed her fraud for the whole world to see. I reclaimed my inheritance, saved my father's legacy, and sent a criminal to prison. Was it revenge? Partially. But mostly it was justice. My father built something beautiful, and someone tried to steal it. I made sure they failed. I made sure his legacy lived on. And now, every building we design, every client we help, every award we win, it's all a testament to Harrison Chen and the values he taught me. Vanessa tried to write me out of my father's story. Instead, I became the hero of it. I'm the one who saved Chen and Associates. I'm the one who exposed corruption and fraud. I'm the one building the future my father dreamed of. And Vanessa? She's a footnote. A cautionary tale. The woman who tried to con a grieving family and lost everything. 3 years ago, I was a devastated daughter who'd lost her father and her inheritance. Today, I'm the successful owner of a thriving architecture firm. Carrying on my father's legacy and building my own. My father always told me that good design requires a strong foundation. He was right about buildings and about life. The foundation he gave me was strong enough to weather even Vanessa's betrayal. And now I'm building something that will last for generations, just like he always planned. That's not just revenge on the woman who tried to steal it all. That's the ultimate victory.